And good afternoon. Welcome to Gators Garage, the home of all things historical gaming in and around the great city of Savannah, Georgia. We have with us this afternoon a someone who's certainly no stranger to this channel, Mr. John Ross, who led the American team at World Open War and also runs Warzone Atlanta, which will be taking place February 7th to 9th of next year. If you're a Bolt Action player, that is absolutely an event worth checking out. Before we get too deep in, just a reminder, if you like what we're doing, click a like. You want to keep up, click subscribe, and hey, help us spread the word by sharing our posts. So there you go. So, Mr. John, welcome.
Well, glad to be here, and but a caveat here: I was not the team captain for the Team America. That was actually Brian Swanson and his son, and they had someone drop, and I was able to step in at the last minute. So all I did was show up with toys and play.
Hey, sometimes that's the best thing.
That is, yeah, huge relief.
I had that experience last week. I went to go play a game of Stargrave actually, and I showed up. The guy had the game ready to go, and I'm like, "This is nice," because you and I both we spend a lot of time organizing.
Oh, all the effort to
So
put on an event. It's like throwing a birthday party for 200 people. It's it's a lot of stress on your shoulders. Yeah,
it really is. So I've kind of looked over what you've written about World Open War. I don't know that everybody's had a chance to read that article. So I thought we would recap some of that and then see if you have any additional thoughts. Now that you've had a little bit of time to think about it, you wrote it up on the 28th of October. We're a couple weeks into November. You're a couple weeks closer to planning your event. And if I know you, you've probably played a few games in the last few weeks. So tell us what you think.
yeah. So World Open War is a really cool event. It's a 3-person team event. And the way the structure works is you each bring an army, and you have to bring an army from a different faction. So if you and I were on a team, and Randy were on a team, for example, you could be Germans and I could be British, and he could be Americans, but we couldn't have 2 British players. So that's kind of the basics.
Okay.
And then you're going to play in 6 games over 2 days. And it's a very clever pairing system. So he tells you on before you show up, the Americans are going to play the Danes. The Americans are going to play, the UK team 2, whatever. And the 4 teams that you're going to play on day 1.
Oh, wow.
And then the winning team, the top winning team forms bracket 1. And he's got 4 brackets. And so the top winning team is going to play the top scoring team, number 1 in group 1 going to be on day 1 is going to be in group 1. And the top scoring team in group 2 is going to be in group 1. And so basically what happens is the top 4 winners in each of their brackets then get together and play in the winner's bracket. And then everyone who came in second is in the second bracket, and third and fourth, which means that you're not out of it. Like if you lost 2 or 3 games, your team lost 2 or 3 games day 1, on day 2, it resets. And now you get a chance to win your bracket.
Oh,
which
wow.
keeps people interested and excited about playing, right? And then on team day 2, the 4 players, the 4 teams that you're going to play. So it's a clever way of keeping all the teams in it. And even if you had a really awful day, come back the next day, take a deep breath, and you can win your bracket. And the prizes for each of the brackets is all equally good. So it's a kind of a clever way to do it. And it also makes, as a team organizer, it makes his scoring responsibilities easier because you're not having to do so many of the gymnastics you do when tournaments get large. But the other thing that he did was really interesting. This is Russell, by the way. He instead of doing first round we're all going to play sectors, and second round we're all going to play kill points or whatever. Each table has a unique scenario on it.
I saw that.
So if there are 36 tables, he's written 36 unique scenarios. And those scenarios are key to the table and the terrain. So you walk up, it tells you what your deployment type is. Are you coming on? Or are you going to deploy? You can deploy in a sector, deploy in the center of the board, whatever the objectives are. If there are objective markers, they're already on that table. And the objective markers are keyed to the terrain. So you had this beautiful table that looked like Saint Nazar with a destroyer along the wharf, and had this little village, right? And so one of the objectives was on the destroyer, one of them was at the intersection in the town. So that when you're playing the scenario and the table match in a way that seems like more narrative.
That's awesome.
Like it makes sense that you would be fighting for the bridge in the middle of the table or whatever. And so that was really cool. And then the winning conditions are unique for each of the tables as well. So you might be playing kill points on
Really
your
good.
table. Randy might be playing, an objective one, and I might be playing in a development game where I have to get off the edge of the table. And so before the round begins, you know who you're playing. So we're going to play against the Irish or whatever, and we're looking over at their armies and going, "Wow, they got a lot of vehicles." So who's going to play on the table where it's about moving across the board, where you're in development style mission, or like who's got the best chance of that, and which table would favor your army. If you got an all shooty army with a bunch of artillery, you probably want a more open table versus someone who's an assault army that wants to be able to hide behind and sneak up. And so the team conversation before the round begins is really cool because you're matching your army both to the opponent and to the table. So then what happens is, okay, you've all decided, okay, you're going to play on the St. Nazar table, I'm going to play on the desert table, whatever, right? Then you put your army lists down, the opponent does. So you get to pick the table and the mission that favors your army best. And then you reveal, and now you know who you're fighting.
Wow.
So it's very different, very clever. And again, it takes a lot of the responsibility out for the tournament organizer because all you're doing is matching them on a set of tables. They get to pick which tables that they're going to play on.
Right. I saw that because you and I both run the brackets, and it's like you spend a lot of time scrambling between rounds to get people matched back up and then reassign the tables. So that's pretty cool. I saw something done Sunday at the fall offensive that was interesting. Now it was only a small group, 6 guys. But what he did is in round 2, he shifted everybody to their left. And so what that did is put everybody on a different table for round 2. And then round 3, he let the players in the winners bracket, if I was listening correctly, select the table they wanted to play on. And so it's kind of different. Again, a small tournament. Everybody seemed like they were happy with it. Me and Randy will be having talking about that more in depth later this week. But I thought that was kind of a neat way to, especially for a small tournament, just to kind of handle things and keep things moving.
But Mike, I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I did the tournament scoring on, and it lists, so you plug in the scores, win or loss, and what score they got on secondaries and their kill points. So you put all this information, and I can make it rank it from top to bottom.
Yep.
And then I can even got a little macro that will say, if you and Randy fought last round, but you still got the high scores, don't play each other, play somebody else. And I can make it do that. But the thing that I cannot make it do is those two things, and make sure you play on a table that you have not played on before. I can't figure out that if-then matrix thing. So maybe one of your listeners is good at Excel, and if they want to raise their hand and help brainstorm with me how to write that macro, I'd be super happy.
3 variables. Yeah, I can even chew on that. I'm no stranger to macros. Okay, that's interesting.
But one of the things about World Open War, which is really nice, is these are the European players. So you have people there from Spain and from Northern Ireland, and a bunch of people from Denmark, and of course the UK, all over the UK. And
Bo Mortensen was there, right?
Bo was
Mortensen there this time.
Yeah, but Bo was there. There were I think 2 full teams from the Danes, and then some of the Danes were playing on kind of like a mixture team, the Barbarians team, which was kind of a mixture, which included August, who's a Georgian. And
nice.
You used to play with us here in Atlanta. He's in the military and deployed in Germany right now. So he played with the Barbarians. But it was really, the culture of the event was very, very collaborative and congenial. I mean, players are there to win, but everyone's there also to have a great time. They see each other all the time at all these European events, the Germany event and the Spanish event, and they travel around. And so because of the way Europe operates, their structure, they see each other and they have become close friends because they have so many tournaments they can go to every single week. And so you go there and it's like a bunch of college buddies that have known each other forever or whatever, and so it's really fun. And they're very nice to the Americans because they appreciate how far and how expensive it is to travel. So they're really nice to us. It's a great time. The games are as much fun as the kibitzing afterwards and dinner and getting to meet all these crazy people. It's really a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That is one thing I've commented on and had other people comment on about the bolt action culture at large is we're very congenial.
Yeah,
Uh,
true.
and I really do like that. I mean, part of what made Sunday work for Fall Offensive is I think they were on their third TO because things had come up, but everybody showed up. They showed up with a will to make things work, and I think that probably in any endeavor, but especially in tabletop gaming, if you approach it with a "Hey, I'm here to have fun and help you tell a good story." Again, I look back at the game I played last weekend with my buddy playing Stargrave, not Bolt Action, but Stargrave. But we both showed up to say, "Okay, let's tell a good story together." And it's the same thing in a tournament. Even more so when you get to play on tables that have obviously been carefully prepared and are very thematic. It's like, all right, let's tell a story. And I mean, all of us have good game stories from Bolt Action where I still chuckle over when me and Randy were playing each other, and I needed I think a 1 to hit him or a 6. I needed a 6. I got the hit. Uh he needed like some kind of high number to fail his morale. He failed his morale, so his guy routes out of the way and it unmasked his anti-tank gun or his anti-tank rifle. They needed a 6 to kill my armored car, which was holding the objectives back in V2. He gets the 6 to hit the armored car, and then gets another 6 to kill the armored car. Run the stats on that one. So we still howl about that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's I think. Go ahead.
it is a game of dice, and there's the what is likely to happen. So you got to know,
Right.
it, you know, you got to learn the rules to play the game. So that's kind of your beginning phase, and then the next is like knowing what to do. Like, okay, now that I know the rules, how do I actually win this game? So learning how to play the
Right.
scenarios. Then when you started getting good, you learn the probabilities. What's likely to happen? If I do this thing, am I likely to wound? Am I likely like what's going to happen? And so if you
It's
once you get to that stage, now you'll improve your win-loss ratio because now you're playing, with probability in your favor and you're not doing stupid
right.
stuff. Or you're doing things that you expect something great to happen and it doesn't, and then it blows your morale, and then you're a sad panda for the rest of the game, right? But when those extreme events happen, where it's like a 6, a 6, a 6, a 6, I played my very first game. I played this really nice young guy. He brought a very cool British Army. He had a couple wasps with flamethrowers, and he had some stuff that I
Oh
hadn't
yeah.
seen on the table in a long time. Had a really cool list. And from the very beginning of the game, I could not roll anything less than a 6. I mean, it was just horrific. I felt so bad for him. And it's that moment, which bolt action, when bolt action slips and it really starts to go pear-shaped, because of the way the dice mechanic is, if I've got 18 dice and you only got 8 left, man, I just beat you. You feel like you're being clubbed, and the kid stayed in it. Like a young
Right.
guy. But he was a great sport. He played all the way through. He was really, really nice. But, I've certainly been on the opposite side of that, which was my game against
Sure.
the Spaniards. Oh my God, was that awful. And same thing happened to me reverse. I could not shoot
Oh,
his tanks. I couldn't do anything. Everything I tried, I'd fail morale. My tanks would run off the board and all the rest of it,
oh my
which is,
gosh.
which is something we should talk about as we talk about what the games were like and, V3 games in a tournament setting, because there's 3 or 4 really interesting things that I learned out of it. But man, watching your own tanks fail a morale test on a 9, on an 8, and then run off the board,
Wow.
right? That is demoralizing.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Man, yeah, Randy's talked about that even in V2, that could be a thing. You would fail a morale test and you'd have to recoil, and if you were near the edge of the board, you were gone. So,
No,
yeah,
no,
that's pretty crazy.
no, no. In V2, that wasn't a thing. You would stop at the edge.
Oh,
Only in
okay.
V3
Okay.
they changed it, right? So if you look at Lesio and look at what he did for, say, Warhammer 40K version 3, there's a lot of Warhammer in the new version of Bolt Action. And your vehicles,
Oh, yeah.
units breaking and running off the table was a thing there, and boy, is that a thing now. So, and you got to be really careful because the rule says they run towards the nearest board edge. So
Huh?
it's not
You're
just
back
like
on.
I came on for reserve and you hit me and then I flee, but it's also like if you're over at the edge. And then here's the other thing too, because like your reconnaissance armored cars that can move really fast
Yes.
forward and backwards, right? They are
Right.
really, really fragile. Because they can they will run off the board 24 inches, and they can turn when
Oh
they
my
do so.
goodness.
They can make up to 2
Oh my
turns, right, or at least 1 turn when they do it. So you've got to be really, really cautious. And so after it happened to me 2 or 3 times during the tournament, now all of a sudden, if my armored car got a single pin on it, which in V2 I would have just sloughed off and go, no big deal. I'll just take a morale check. Now I'd have to look at it and go, do I rally with a single pin?
Well, that's also where your armor leader is going to become much more important now with that +2. That makes a difference now. And
So,
so I hadn't even thought about that. Go ahead.
yeah. So the rule is, so a lieutenant, a junior lieutenant has a +2.
Yep.
And a company commander has a +4. We're going to want to come back to talk about company commanders in a second. But the armor leader only has a +1. He's only a +1. And that caught a lot of people by surprise. So your armored commander,
like me just now.
Yeah, your platoon commander is only a +1. So, but the infantry lieutenant's leadership counts for the tanks.
Remember reading that? Yeah.
The tank's leadership only counts for other vehicles. It doesn't count for infantry and artillery. So there's some subtlety in those rules. It's before anyone would I'd encourage people to go back and read those morale rules very, very carefully on how the armored lieutenant works, because he's not the same. He doesn't work exactly the same as the lieutenant. And he can also only snap to 1 other vehicle, not 2.
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
so an your junior officer, he's got a +2 morale, and he can do a snap to of 2 different things. And the armored lieutenant, he's got a +1 morale, and he can only snap to 1 more vehicle. And so, just a
okay.
Some rule to know.
Yeah. Okay. I've got my wheels turning here, thinking about ways you can mitigate and maybe you toss one of your tanks over near one of the infantry officers so that they can actually activate the tank better than your armor commander.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What we're learning too in this new version, officers have suddenly become a lot more important. A lot more. How you use your officers is really going to determine whether you win or lose. Before, officers were useful, but a first loot, which a lot of people took, was okay. I think it was 1+1. But now +2+2, now you got a whole different order of different things. Matter of fact, when I was running my demo games this past weekend, I coached a couple of the players through getting the full use out of that officer to keep him close to get the +2 on the guys that are wavering, and use that double snap too. I did that on one player. I did a double snap too, and I got both my light machine guns opening up on a single squad. And tell you what, you can you use your officer right, you can flat melt a unit away in a hurry.
Well, the fact that it's so much easier to hit now means that application of fire, which in V2, a lot of times, you could put out a lot of bullets, but you were hitting on 6s and 7s. Now that you're hitting on 4s and 5s, that application of fire, if you can really double up or triple up on that fire, you can watch big units melt. So that officer's become super important. And because he can snap 2, or if you're German, snap 3 units, right? Now you're really beginning to manipulate the dice bag in ways that can be quite powerful. I saw several players I did not. My list just had a couple of junior lieutenants, but I saw a couple of players bring the company commander, and I was watching their games. And that company commander with a +4 and the ability to snap to 4 units, or maybe 5 if you're Germans, that may be a new version 3 Uber play. And I'll give you an example. There was a list there where the guy brought most of his forces were inexperienced.
Okay.
And V2, that's a real liability. You look at that and go, that's really, really scary. But for this guy, he's got a company commander with a 12-inch bubble. I mean, that's a big radius, right? And he slapped that company
2 feet, essentially.
Right. Down in the middle of the unit, and put him in I think he was even in a vehicle. So now he's even bigger because it uses the radius of the vehicle. You measure from the edges of the vehicle. So now it's like 13 inches, right? And now all of his units, instead of worrying about 8s, you get a pin marker, now you got to roll a 7. He's only failing on a 12.
Wow.
Everything's only
Wow.
failing the morale tests on a 12. And if you've got green units or shirkers or things, that require an order test to go do something, I mean, you're only failing on a 12. So you are suddenly your unreliable army just became rock solid. And now think about that. Think about the implications, right? Because now all of a sudden you wouldn't have taken those kinds of units because they were unreliable and potentially, kill points waiting to happen. And now you start looking at them going, wow, I can really double down on this very expensive hordes of infantry. And they'll survive just as good as anybody else. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I heard several guys make the same comment about how powerful the officer was at the event that I was at this last weekend. And to your point, my observation of the new bolt action is you're not dodging shots. You're going to get hit. The only question is you're going to be able to hit the other guy faster than he hits you. And that makes a real difference. You still think medium machine guns are not worth the points?
They're terrible. I mean, I know a lot of people are making a case for them. Maybe if you're a German player, you can make the case for them because it's 7 shots, whatever,
Right.
Their issue isn't their offensive output. I understand the point of them, which is I've got this 50-point unit that's probably going to put a pin on anything that it shoots at and be able to do it at range. And I go, okay, I'll give you it. It's going to be very, very good at that. It's only 3 guys. And for all the reasons that we just discussed, if you turn a lot of shots at a 3-guy unit, even if they're in heavy cover, those units do not last long. All of your small teams, your snipers, forward observers, officer teams, they're all really fragile. Right. And unless if they need to be hidden to survive. And so now all of a sudden you're plopping a 3-man team, which to be effective can't be hidden. You're plopping it down. Right. So Bor Mortensen, he brought some inexperienced machine guns, which I thought was odd. He brought these inexperienced machine gun teams. I haven't talked to him to see how they did. I know I don't think he was super pleased with the placement of his team, but I don't know how he particularly did. But I was looking at, he and I completely disagree on this front. I mean, it's like it's just a kill point waiting to happen. Here's a 3-point inexperienced guys. Oh, I'm going to go down and cover. Now they're 2-up saves. Well, if you ever remember playing Warhammer 40K and you brought a unit of 5 Terminators and thought they were going to survive the game, you know what? You 2-roll 1s. They die. And that's been my experience so far. Versus take that same 50 points and put it into 5 more guys that can move and can maneuver and get behind stuff and don't have to be exposed to be useful. And now all of a sudden, I think that's a much better choice. But my army. So Brian, I was very busy leading up to the event, and so I sent Brian my army list, and I'd done some of the points wrong. It turns out I was like 30 or 40 points under. So he went back in and added 2 light machine guns to my units to get the points back up. And I was not high on light machine guns. I thought they were stupid, and I still think they're marginal. But I was playing Germans, which means those light machine guns were getting 5 shots, and they had the range. And I have to say that I may have changed my mind slightly on the value of that light machine gun. As a German player, it was very nice to be able to reach out and put a pin on somebody at range. So I
think is going to be that's going to be a key element of the new game. Is range matters a lot more now because you're so effective at range. And the comment too about it feels more like 3rd edition 40K. And I think some of that's by design, the 4+ base cover saves now as opposed to die roll modifiers. I think this would definitely be a game that a 40K player might take a second look at now, because it's going to be the tactical transition is going to be a little bit more comfortable.
Michael, if you look at the World Open War lists, and Russell's got the files posted, so if you wanted to attach it to your show for people to see what all the list looks like, you could probably do that. If you look at the list, it's the first major V3 tournament. And so anyone who's kind of sitting down and trying to decide, okay, with all the craziness you can do with the open force org charts and what does a modern list look like? Looking at the range of V3 lists is really interesting. And I think Michael, you'll see a couple of things. The first one is they're all really different. I mean, it's all over the board. You had heavy armor lists. You had lists with no tanks at all. The Brian's son, Colton, who may have been the top scoring player at the whole event, I don't know, but he did really, really well. He brought a list with no vehicles in it, to lists with heavy air observers, or some guy there had 4 artillery observers. You had plenty of people with big, huge artillery parks. It was literally all over the board in terms of what you see. And so right off the bat, when I looked down the lists, I was a very happy boy, because it was the exact opposite of what the V2 tournaments are, which was Brits with Gurkhas and Stuarts. Oh, wait, Brits with Gurkhas and Stuarts. How about some Soviets with some dog mines and Stuarts? It's like so boring. And now it's so married. So that made me happy. I don't know about other players, but I thought that was great. But the second thing you'll see in the list is a lot of players took heavy indirect fire lists.
Okay.
And I did not. I took a tank heavy list, but there were a lot of players that brought a bunch of indirect fire. And it was and it would be interesting to go back and look to see how well they placed. But there were a lot of lists with people that would have been like artillery parks. They had 2 or 3 howitzers, or they had 4 mortars or whatever. And there were a lot of spotters on a lot of tables, with people experimenting with using the single spotter to spot for multiple pieces and that kind of thing. That was really interesting. A lot of air observers, a lot more air observers than we ever would have seen in V2.
Yeah. Somebody else was talking about how air power seems like it's coming more into its own, especially with, I think that's been one of the things that was previewed about the new Armies of Germany book, is an early war German army now with air observers going to be very dangerous.
Well, so we actually, so Russell, I guess, was a playtester. I don't know for sure, and he customized the lists.
Yep.
There were a lot of changes to the force org charts, what you could bring and not bring. I mean, he did a lot of comp kind of rules. So much so that I don't know that I actually played V3. I played V3 Russell, but I think but he had a lot of changes. But one of the changes was if you brought an all early war German list, and I brought an Africa Corps list, then your air observer could call in 2 strikes. So I brought a all early war German list. I dusted off my Stuka and I had it on the table, and it was a lot of fun. So I got to, like the Americans, got to bring in 2 airstrikes.
Interesting. That's cool. I know I've seen that in other games as well, where early war Germans definitely get better air superiority, and that's as it should be. Really interesting to see it in a open tournaments setting like Bolt Action. Most of the time where else I've seen it is, usually on tabletop, board games. Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leader, Squad Leader. The Germans have just lots of air power in 1939, 1940, even 41. But they're playing against 40, 41 armies. Here, and it's what I've always said, one of the things I treasure about Bolt Action, I really respect about it, is any army can be competitive, from an early war French to a late war Soviet, because they've done a pretty darn good job of getting the combat BPV of the units right. And I like that. That really does allow players to collect what they want to collect, what they want to play, and not have to always be chasing, to your point, the British Gurkha meta, which a lot of people chose not to chase, and that's as it should be too. Play your game, enjoy your figures.
Yeah, that's right. I think the new edition is so new. Every game eventually settles down around some meta, and there will be some units that are more powerful than others, and there will be some bills that begin to congeal. Right now, it's wide open, and that is a wonderful feeling. It does allow people to reach into their toy box and bring the cool things they want to bring. Unfortunately, though, you didn't see a lot of 9+, 10+ tanks. I don't remember seeing Panthers and Tigers and IS whatevers, and unfortunately, the points changes they did for the big tanks versus the way the rules operate, it's still really hard to justify adding them into your list. It's going to be one of my challenges this year. I want to see if I can start. So playing Germans, I own 3 different German armies, and I barely played them in V2 because it was so hard to
Okay.
get the points to right. So I want to play my Germans more. And the second thing I want to do is figure out how I can make a list with a Panther or a Tiger or something cool in it. So the list that I brought was an Africa Corps list, and I do have a full Africa Corps army with all the green jackets and the khaki pants and the whole thing, right? The desert
Yeah,
bases.
Africa Corps is so much fun to paint and put together.
They are cool, but I almost never play them. So I brought these guys. So it was 4 squads of infantry with rifles.
Okay.
It was 2 light mortars and an anti-tank rifle.
Okay.
I had a truck and a Kuba wagon, both inexperienced. All the rest of everything else was regular. Had a regular platoon commander just on his own, just a regular dude. And then my second
single guy, or did he have an escort?
Single guy, and I actually think the officer with escorts is a pretty good buy, but for the points I couldn't make it work. But he was just a single regular lieutenant. And then in my second platoon, I had two Panzer III Cs, 2 Panzer IIs, and a 222 armored car.
That's just like a perfect Africa Corps force right there.
Isn't
I
it?
like it.
And a Ford Air Observer, a regular Ford Air Observer, and I had a Stuka.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture of the army too if you want to post it. It's because it looked really cool on the table. But I mean, like you can totally see the officer in the Kuba wagon and the truck with some infantry in it, and a big conga line of all the tanks grumbling down some news footage roll. It was fun playing a completely 100% historical army, in which I wasn't dipping into, had no Panzerfausts, no late war stuff. So that was really fun.
That's probably the only major critique I have of V3 is it doesn't feel. It's very easy to kit bash an army with different periods, and the historian and the purist in me doesn't like that.
Well, we on your show, we often are talking to the Valencia tournaments. I know that's what WoW is about, but Michael, in the theater books are these scenarios, and the scenarios are a blast, and they're actually way more fun to play. And I've played with, like, I've got a group here. We're kind of stalled right now, but we were doing the France 1940 book.
Okay.
So we were doing from the opening maneuver where the Germans are crossing the border, all the way up to the, to the Germans approaching the Meuse and all that. And each week we were just doing another one of those scenarios. And of course, your force has to match what was available exactly at that time. So early on, I've got a Soma tank, and I've got some cavalry, and no anti-tank guns. I've got some light howitzers left over from World War I, right? But as the game goes along, and the Germans are with Panzer Is and Is. It's really fun. So for the purist in you, go dust off some of those campaign books. Look at the scenarios and doing a different scenario each week. And the other thing that's kind of fun about it is players will come and go. Like we say, we're going to help do the 4th scenario this week, and some other person will play, and we'll play 2 versus 2 or 3 versus 3. It's pretty fun.
Okay, and I haven't. I have a couple of those campaign books in my collection, my personal collection. I've just never taken time to do the scenarios because they are unit specific. Even as a store owner, I can't buy it all, but. That's and actually though, that would be a very interesting way to do almost like an escalation. It's like, okay, who's gonna, everybody buys maybe one tank for the Germans and one tank for the British, and then you kind of build your collection. And at the end of it, you don't even necessarily have to keep it. You can sell it off on eBay, or you can swap it with your buddies. That's a part of the joy of having a community. But I'll definitely take a second look at the campaign books. It's a good idea.
There's a group of people who are historical, and they want to come up and they want to do the Panzer division or whatever. They got this vision in mind of what they want to build. And you got the other folks for whom the tournament aspect of bolt action is a puzzle. And they want to figure out what is the ops for 1,000 points or 11. What's the best army that I can build using any combination of stuff? Neither of those are wrong. Right. Neither of those are wrong. Are totally legitimate ways to play. But when you get the
Yeah.
historical player and the min-max player and you push them together, sometimes that experience is not so fun, right? Because they're coming up and this guy's going, they did not have Panzerfausts at the same time the Panzer IIs were rolling around the battlefield. And this guy's going, yeah, but
Right.
it's a goodbye, And so,
but again, the two armies, though, I would submit the two armies will be competitive because bolt action balances quite nicely. And so I think, and that's one of the things I really love about that is one of the things I love the flip side of the game too, is you can pick what you like, but you can also run your historicals with a fair degree of confidence that you're going to be competitive. And that's a good thing.
Like, again, it's so new and there's so much flexibility in the force org charts now that I think people can do historical lists and still make them strong. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. If there's 4 or 5 takeaways from the first major global V3 event, it's air observers can be a thing now because the risk of hurting yourself is so low if you play it right.
Yes,
it's rare that you will, which means I think you're going to see a lot of players take an AA. Second thing, the observation is the 50 cal is an incredible weapon now.
Yep.
It's because, so it used to be in V2, the rule was if I shoot your Tiger tank and you're a regular Tiger tank and I shoot it with a weapon that can't hurt it, 50% of the time you just slough, you don't even take a pin. Now you will take a pin.
Yeah.
So an anti-tank rifle, any of these little cheapy things, you're right, that weren't that effective, now they are pin machines. And so learning how to distribute pins to high threats is really cool, especially big tanks, which, is a thing. The third one is small teams are just really fragile now. Hard cover alone is not going to save you. And you need to be very cautious with how you play your small teams. They're still valuable. You can still do really cool things with them. But the old phenomena, which is I got a 10-man squad, and I'm taking casualties, and it looks really evil, and they get down to 2 guys, and suddenly they are a small team in cover. They're 7s to hit, and now they become mega survivable. That is gone.
John Wayne. Right.
That is gone. Those teams will just slough off. Lots and lots of armored transports.
Yes.
Looks like the price point for armored transports has dropped. But more important than that, the big aha is that your officer can now yell over the side and give orders.
Yep.
So he can do snap twos, and his leadership bubble still works out of the transport. That is huge. And it makes armored transports, I think, exceedingly valuable. And I bet you're going to see a lot of them on the table. So that's kind of interesting. Is
there still a place for wheeled transports, soft transports?
I brought 2 to get cheap ordnance.
Okay.
I used my truck to move infantry up the battlefield and get them off the table and score with them, so it was still there. They're certainly, more fragile than they were in V2, but they're just exactly as fragile as they were in V1. We're back to the V1 rules, where a 6 on the damage roll destroys them, and we still took trucks and transports then. So I think they've got a place. You're just going to have to be much more cautious with them.
Got it.
There were not nearly the number of assault armies that there would have been in a previous tournament, and I think that's going to change. I think people are a little bit sour on assault because it is harder to get off an assault. But I think over time you're going to see people build more confidence again in assault armies as you learn how to use them. You just can't go just blindly charging across the table now. You're going to have to be more thoughtful. You have to whittle the squads down a little bit before you assault in, and you're going to have to you can set up your assault a turn or 2 in advance. But that was while I would say there weren't many heavy assault armies there, I don't think assault is done yet. I just don't think the community's figured out how to do it. I'll tell you what was blindingly obvious was the power of submachine gun armed troops at point-blank range.
Oh, I was just going to say, assault doesn't necessarily have to mean close combat. It can mean running up. And I used to do that in V2. I would, rather than assault somebody, I'd run up and hose them down, which is a much lower risk proposition. But go ahead.
the big change is, so you're going to run up with those and you're going to hit on twos because there's no penalty for
Right.
moving, right? And you get a +2 now for being at point blank range with any weapon. So you're going to run up and in on twos. It used to be the guy could go, wait, I'll go down. Well, going down doesn't help you. You still get your
It's
cover
not
save,
good.
but it doesn't help at point blank range, which actually I like because you're laying on the ground. I'm going to shoot you, right? So, but the power. So when you see like that paratrooper unit coming up with a bunch of submachine guns and the rest of it, now I found myself backing up and having to get out of the threat range with them, which is really cool. So that threat radius is really an 8-inch. Well, it's a 12-inch range for the submachine gun, but point blank is 6. So it's a 12-inch threat radius for those guys running up and hose you, and that's really, really ugly. So I pay attention to that. And then finally, I think we don't know yet on, there's people freaking out about, oh my God, I could bring 5 howitzers or 5 rocket launchers or whatever, all the threats. I don't think the super artillery parks were any more or less dangerous than any of the other builds that were there.
Okay, because that was one of the comments that when we were taking breaks Sunday at Fall Offensive, we were talking about the different army builds, and just about to a man, people thought that the artillery rules are now a lot more generous, and people can just take too much artillery. But I'm looking, and your guns have a minimum radius most of the time of around 24 to 30 inches. So they get in literally under your guns, unless you're sighted to fire over open sights, you're going to be in trouble. And to your point, like you said earlier, okay, go ahead and take your indirect. Well, I'll pick off your spotter. Now you've got to get where you can see me. Now you're vulnerable to my machine guns. Life gets interesting.
Life gets interesting. Yeah, it is. It's really. I had a great time. In summary, my experience there.
Good.
It was so much fun. It felt like it was a favored movie, but it's got a different ending now.
I like it. I like it.
And so you kind of re-engaged with the franchise in a way that was really fun. Figuring out your strategies, you have to think differently. How you use, even it's the same exact army, how you use it is different now. I brought a heavy tank army, and it had a lot of advantages, but it also had a lot of disadvantages. Like I couldn't keep them from running off the table. And so now you have to think about, do I have to bubble wrap my armor with an inexperienced infantry squad behind it to prevent them from having to do that? And so I think there's a whole slew of new tactics that we're going to have to learn.
Okay.
I think while only the top 5, the big 5 armies have books out, and so that's gonna a lot of players are gonna switch back to one of those core armies for a while until the books start coming out. But that's actually in a way good.
Yes,
because for a lot of us, it's relearning how to play British without Gurkhas, or learning how to play Germans without relying on a Panzerfaust in every single squad, or all of this. And so the armies are different enough that I think players were going to have a lot of fun with it. And that would be my overall summary. The event was fun. It was fun. Every game was fun, except,
good deal.
Getting absolutely destroyed by the Spanish team was they did win it all. So all credit to them and their skill. But it was still every game was fun, and I'm so looking forward to the future games, the future of V3. I think it's gonna be fun.
That is fantastic, and of course, we've got your event coming up in February. Warzone. It's looking like you're getting some good traction there.
Yeah.
Are you going to make any adjustments to your Warzone based on what you learned at World Open War?
So it's such a great question. So right now, I am saying. So the Friday games, there's 3 games on Friday. There's 750 points, and no armored or artillery. So you can bring whatever you can fit in 750. You can bring it, just no armored. It's a recon event, right?
That's good. That's what I did. Yeah, good idea.
Right, and then but then right now it's 1250 points, 5 games, 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and right now I am saying bring your toys, come. Now, there's a lot of players that have been pinging me, worried about what that might be. And, this game isn't for me. This game is for the players. So
Right.
if that's causing a lot of angst with a bunch of players, I am toying with the idea of doing limits of 0 to 3 on anything that's not in your basic infantry squad.
Okay.
I haven't done it yet. I haven't pulled that trigger yet. I'm still taking
Right.
input from players about how they feel about it. I just think it's
Good
so
idea.
early to do a lot of comp. Like we don't really
Right.
know, and so
Right.
I think Warzone may be the second large tournament. I know that Calissa is going to do the Siege of Augusta in
Right.
January, right?
Yep.
And then and then there'll be my event, but I think my event will be the first grand tournament style event in the U.S. Under V3, and I kind of feel like we
Right.
should just kind of play the game and see what happens. I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I'll be, confession time here. I've not played enough games with enough of the toys to really get a feel for, I had the one tournament I ran around the intro tournament, and I kind of, I put bumpers on that one. And then my demo games are usually 2 squads and a command team with support. So there's a part of me that says, I favor dice caps as a way to kind of limit some of the craziness. I like the idea of the 0 to 3, but then on the other hand, I think if everybody coming in understands that, hey, we're still new, we're coming in wide open, and just be ready to be mentally flexible. Your point about everybody taking anti-aircraft, I think that was going to happen anyway, because the new autocannon rules are so aggressive now for autocannons where they can split
Good.
that autocannon fire up. Like Randy's got he's got his M16 that he runs with, what is that, 450 cals, right? So that's nasty. You've got the Germans with their Whirlwind 420s, and that's going to be good against air, but it's going to be death on troops. And we were talking about artillery. It's going to be death on artillery. Go ahead and bring your artillery park, because the flip side of artillery is they don't move fast. And a clever player that can really keep his troops moving is going to really give you fits. So, I'm more inclined probably to trust your judgment as the TO, but also to say, if you want to pop the lid off and bring all the toys, bring all the toys. Again, everybody's going to know on the lead in. What of all of us, you've played the most competitive type version 3, but to your point, modified. You also played in my version 3 tournament, and you're playing regular, so you're going to have a good feel for what that looks like. For my part, I think if I were coming to play, I'd probably build out a standard all arms, combined arms formation that would be capable of dealing at least competitively with whatever I might see. Infantry unit, probably, a tank and an armored car on the armor platoon, support unit with medium machine gun, because I love those things, and the mortar and a spotter. Maybe an artillery unit with a pair of light field guns, just to keep things interesting, and maybe a recon, either an infantry recon unit to kind of give me that recon option. But that would, again, if I do that, I'm covering just about all the bases. Probably, I guess the only other thing on the armor side, I might throw a third anti-aircraft vehicle in there, since I'm visualizing running my Germans, and so I would have to. The PSW 223 can double as an anti-aircraft vehicle. So there you go.
Yeah, you
So
can't.
that's, huh?
You can't. I actually built a list with all 222s. Right.
Yum.
It's an autocannons and it's a machine gun. It's really cheap. They're all recce, and it's there. And just like you have this, so essentially you've got a recon element and you've got an infantry platoon, and that I thought that would
Yep.
look cool on the table and go forward. It's you described an all comers list there, Michael, and I think that list would do very well. I think you could plop
Yep.
down that table and you would have a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, people, you want to play your game with your army. And if you know your army and, have an idea, obviously you want to know what your opponent's army can do and not do, and prepare for that. A comment too about the whole, who's got rule books, who doesn't. Right now, all the miners have their PDFs, and so they're playable. And I would even challenge people to go ahead and grab all the PDFs for the miners so you have them. You might decide you want to build a miner army after you look at that PDF and say, hey, the Finns can do this. I've got a fella here in Savannah just starting to get into bolt action, and he's going with the Finns.
Yeah,
and
great.
just he's excited.
The minor powers have what I would consider to be, fully playable, but too generic, right? They don't have as much flavor in their army special wide rules. In many cases, they were sloppily written. They just obviously Warlord did not put the time and energy into those lists that a lot of minor players would like. That said, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from slapping a French army down to the table, or Belgians or whatever, and having a lot of fun with it. I played against someone playing Hungarians, and it was a great list, and they had a great time.
Awesome.
And it was a close game.
Yeah, we've got a Hungarian player here too. Matter of fact, it was Hungarians versus Finns last Saturday at Savannah Line Games. They came together and they had a good time.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. Wow. Well, John, this has been really good. I always learn things when I talk bolt action with you. I think because you get to play more than me. But I certainly could stand to get more time on the table. I want to thank you again for going and representing the U.S. at World Open, and also thank you for all the work you do in the community. And I am looking forward to probably talking to you at least once or twice more before Warzone Atlanta. And if folks are watching this, if you can make that weekend and go to Atlanta and play, it is absolutely worth it. And I know Randy's planning to go. I think maybe one or two more players out of Savannah may be going. I'm certainly planning to put as big a promo on it as I can, because I think it's absolutely worth supporting. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you. And it's gonna be a great event. It should be twice the size it was last year. So
holy Hannah.
In fact, I committed to the hotel. It needs to be twice the size that it was last year, because otherwise I'll be down for thousands of dollars to a hotel. So please do come. Yeah.
All right. So let's not leave John hanging, guys. Let's all rally around the flag, go push some toys and roll some dice. All right, John. Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.
Oh, just to recap, folks. If you like what we're doing, push that like button. Hit the subscribe button so you can keep up. We have a whole range. We've covered version 3 from preliminary up to what it is now. We'll continue to cover the books as they come out, to cover the events as they come out. Definitely worth keeping up with us. If you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi or Patreon. Today I'm drinking tea. So, $5 buys us a cup of coffee, or you can buy merchandise from Gator Games and Books and help keep us on the air. Thank you for your time, and may your dice be lucky.
Bye.